Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me this wonderful Tuesday. I am your host, Louise H. Reed, with listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts. I'm the fortunate host here every Tuesday at this time to look into the lives of everyday people doing extraordinary things. People who are taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. As I do each week, I'd like to thank you for joining me and for providing me the opportunity to share and grow with you. There's nothing more valuable than time, so I'm honored that you're sharing yours with me. And to show my gratitude, I've started a Lady Boss Loyalty monthly giveaway. Anyone who comments on a podcast episode on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty will be entered. So please comment away. You can find me at my handle, Louise H. Reed. So today, I'm really excited to be sharing my very first winner. I feel like I need a drum roll. There we go. Thank you. That's my drum roll. The first winner is Lynn McGreer. So congratulations, Lynn.
Woo!
Please contact me. Woo! So I can get your coordinates and send you some Lady Boss love. So now I would like to share today's guest with you. Today we have a wonderful human being and kick-ass businesswoman, Katie Cunningham. She is the founder of LYFETYMES, a free celebration and party planning marketplace platform where people can plan any party, shower, a get-together, or milestone celebration. Her background, interestingly, is more than 20 years in finance and tech, focused on customer acquisition, innovation, and revenue strategy in 2 Fortune 100 companies, as well as a San Francisco startup. She has been recognized as a top woman in FinTech in 2017. Katie is also the proud mom of 2 boys, and she lives outside of the San Antonio, Texas area near her parents. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you, Louise. I'm very, very honored to even be selected to attend. I still feel like I'm participating as a viewer asking a question. So I'm very, very humbled. I should let you read every intro going forward because I was like, who is she describing? So, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity. And this is really kind of, even though I've done articles and whatnot, this is, and spoke in front of people before, this is kind of my first interview of this sort. So I, like most, probably anybody coming on your show, is a little bit nervous, but also very excited for kind of the adventure of putting, myself out there. So if I can do this, anybody can do this. So thank you again. And it's wonderful company to be in.
Oh my gosh, you've just made my day in so many ways. And so also wanted to extend a thank you for exposing sort of that vulnerability, right?
Oh,
that,
well, when you're ready for 40 minutes of it.
Yeah. So, it's like when I read your bio and I hear of the success that you've had in corporate as well as starting your own business, for you to be able to so openly share that you feel nervous when doing something new is so valuable. And I really want to emphasize that to my listeners, because I think that somehow we grow up and think that things are supposed to sort of feel easy, or we're not supposed to feel scared anymore when we try new things, or we're supposed to get it all right.
Right.
And that's part of the reason, a main reason why I love exploring the backstories of people's lives. I look at your website, I read your LinkedIn, and you just are rocking it. And it's not to take away from the fact you're not rocking it, but you've had some, like everyone, challenges along the way and have just continued to persevere. And so that's what I really sort of want to pull back the curtain a little bit and explore a little bit about the human behind this success.
Yeah. And I think, when it's so, perception is so funny, right? Because when you read something or look something, you're like, oh my gosh, they're rocking it, right? Which made my day, right? But I will have like an egg timer every 3 minutes of feeling, you know, up and down, right? Whether you're rocking it or you're drowning in it, right? So, and I think that's really part of the experience and how you define it, you know, whether you're rocking it in your personal life and sometimes it's always one or the other, right? And hopefully for great people, maybe it's both, right? But I think that you have to look at the bigger picture, because if you look at little tiny increments, then you probably don't always feel that way. So when you look at kind of my resume and everything at face value, I think that sometimes, you know, people are like, oh, wow. And when you look at it yourself, you don't always feel that way, right? Yeah. Because you know where all the dead bodies are buried. And, you know a little bit more of it may look pretty, but that was an ugly fight. So, and to this day, you know, I'm still in it. So, you know, startups is, Lifetimes is definitely, you know, a new baby. It's a startup, and, you know, I've got good moments and I've got really bad moments of what the hell did I do to myself? But I think you got to keep it in perspective, and that's the beautiful thing about life.
It really is. And I know you've had a lot of experiences through your life that have shaped you in creating that perspective. Some joyful things, as you talk about your kids, and your kids are just a beautiful and amazing way to broaden your perspective and experience in life.
Some days.
Yeah, and some days not so pretty. And then, of course, it's hard, you know, there are hardships that we all go through that I know contributed to and influenced the path that your life took. Mm-hmm. But let's, maybe we could start with, you know, the thing that struck me the most in reading your bio was from corporate to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? So tell me, like, what prompted this leap?
My gosh, I would have to go pretty deep on that one. But I mean, to really kind of sum it up is, you know, after 20 years in corporate, and look, I got, you know, I think women always say we got lucky, and I'm going to stop saying that, because I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. Yep. And so I worked my butt off. I did not get to go to college. I think I went for like 3 months, and it was the first time I'd been out. My parents were very overprotective, and I went crazy, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then after that, I had to go home and get a job and go to work. So that plan never really kind of worked out for me, which is fine. But, you know, for me, I spent 20 plus years in doing corporate finance, you know, a business side of it. And there were parts of it I loved, and there were parts of it that I didn't love. And towards the end of my financial career, I had completely fallen out in love with it. I would wake up, and look, I had power, whatever that means, right? I had organizations. I flipped things on their heads and built, you know, billions of dollars in fundings and in deposit accounts with the initiatives I implemented. I was very lucky to have, you know, great bosses that let me be kind of an entrepreneur and do what I kind of wanted, right? Yeah. So that was part of it. But towards the end, you know, the higher you go up in a corporate, the harder, not the harder that it gets, just you have a different perspective, I think. And it becomes a lot more like the Hunger Games, like the Thrones. And I think I was built from a perspective that I like being in a team. And I believe that, you know, the rising tide lifts all ships. We talked about that in anything in life, right? Yeah. And I was miserable. I would wake up with a physical pain in my stomach. Mm-hmm. And I was exhausted by the bullshit. And you can tweet, you can bleep that out or whatever, but that's I'm good with that. The truth of it. And towards the end, I'd given up so much of my family and my friends, and I was alone. And I felt like even though I was making really good money, I was using that to farm my life out. So whether I was hiring a housekeeper or you know, somebody to do something for me that I wanted to do for myself, you know, I'm not saying that I love to clean the toilets. Let's not get crazy. But, you know, I wanted to do stuff for the family. Like you talk about, you know, oh, look, I could walk in any boardroom and feel fine with the people in there, CEO, whatever. I've been yelled at by the best of them or sat with the best of them, right? But something as little as going into a Boy Scout meeting with Boy Scout moms, when I finally got the opportunity to do that later in life, I was like deer in headlight. Yeah, I was like, I just knew they were calling me out, like, okay, look at her with the Walmart cookies, like for the bake sale. Like, it was stuff like that. So I think I just got to a point where money really could not buy my happiness anymore. It couldn't buy back my memories. I couldn't get those moments back. I just got sick of it. And during the time, I'd learned a lot by then, right? So I was looking at the world from more of a perspective of innovation, because that's kind of where I was at. And I was starting to plan things for, you know, my girlfriends, like, you know, my niece's graduation party. My one girlfriend had a baby shower, right? And so because I came from a very innovative kind of a lending background of taking mortgages and how you make that more automated and innovative, I went in like everyone else did, because I was living in the world of the wedding wire, right? They had all these great things. So I went in and said, hey, okay, how do you plan a baby shower? And what I got back was just, you know, a list you could print off. And I was sitting there going, you know, it was just timing was right. And I was like, if I don't do this, somebody's going to do it, and somebody will do it, right? I think you can't live in a world of afraid to do something because you're afraid you're going to get knocked off or whatever. You know, it will happen. But for me, I was just like, I want to do this. This is everything in my life has led up to this moment. And when you say you stand over a cliff and decide to jump, that's exactly what happened. Now there were pushes behind me, right? Yeah. There was definitely wind at my back that got me to that moment, that made me act faster than I would have. And I am grateful to this day for that. But I jumped, and look, I have scary moments with lifetimes. Like, I haven't had a check in a year, you know? Yeah. I've got a kid going to college. They're now driving, and insurance with boys and stuff. So, but I knew that I did not want to be on my deathbed with that regret of what if I didn't do it? And that really kind of pushed me.
And there's so much to unpack there. So thank you for all of that. I actually just took a few notes in hopes that I remember a few things I want to dig into. Something you said at the beginning of that was, you mentioned that you were having physical symptoms associated with going into the office each day. And I'm raising my hand here as well as one of those people. I actually, maybe a little too graphic, but I actually was throwing up on my way out the door. It was a powder room right outside, right by the front door, and I was physically ill on my way to going to work. If that's not a sign, friends, that something needs to change, I don't know what is. And so my question is this. I am sure there are listeners who are hearing this perhaps for the first time, that it's a thing other people feel. It's not just you. It's not just them. It was us too. There'll be others. What advice would you have for them as the first thing to do to sort of figure out where is this coming from, and what's my first step? What do I need to do first?
Yeah, I mean, and look, I'm not a life coach. I'm not a doctor. I leave that to people like you and other guests on your show. I love that mug. And so I can just go on my experience is that you need to recognize it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a physical symptom, a mental symptom with anxiety, you need to recognize something is impeding your happiness. And I always say, trust your gut. It may not be always right, but it's usually right. And I think it's an indicator of happiness, right? Because you spend a lot of time working, and you really need to love what you do. And because it affects everything. It affects your home life. It affects your finances. It affects your confidence. Your confidence comes down if you don't love what you do, because you can't really be good at it. And you don't necessarily have to be skipping down the street every day. I mean, but you have to enjoy it, right? But if you need to take inventory, and then you need to take steps to change it. And you've got to really, I try to look within a lot more than I ever did, and get rid of the people the things that I call are emotional vampires, and try to take you're not going to get there overnight. That's an impossible task. Nobody can. But try to take the steps that will get you there. So, I have people, all the time that say, hey, I want to start something for myself. I don't know how. I've got all this stuff going on because life is such God, it'll give it to you. There's a million reasons why not to, but for yourself, no matter what, start something. Maybe I never thought I would take this advice until I was living it, right? Whether it's a blog or joining a Facebook group and starting a conversation, or just something for yourself that will help you learn something different, expose yourself to a different group, elevate your thinking, elevate who you surround yourself with, because, I've been really lucky in being able to surround myself by people that are smarter, wiser, faster, or offer some nugget that they can tell me 100 things. If I get one thing, that was worth it for me, to change your own perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think people have a hard time taking, advice, or they sit in the stands. It's very easy to shout out calls, but I think for ourselves, it's really hard to kind of look within and make that change of what needs to happen. And I think some people just we get into life and like, oh, we got to pick up the kids, we got to make dinner, we got to do 20 minutes a day. Just try that. 20 minutes a day of doing something you wouldn't usually do to better yourself, whatever that means.
I think that's so valuable. And I know you mentioned at the outset of that answer, you're not a life coach, you leave that to others. I think that you gave such a full and rich answer to that.
Oh, well, thank you. I got lucky.
Hey, wait a second. You said at the top of the hour that you don't get lucky.
I use it when it works for me. That's one thing about me.
And this is what I find so cool and so neat about speaking so openly and honestly with people who have gotten to where you have in your life and are free and open to share, again, the bumps, the bruises, the warts, the successes along the way. Because I think when we can lean into the success that others have achieved and how they have achieved it, we pick up these little nuggets. We pick up these little pieces. Someone will have just picked up something from what you just shared there and say, yes, I'm going to try that. So much richness in that. And I want to echo as well what you were saying about sort of stillness and taking some time to sort of reflect within. Yep. In the busyness of our world, it's just getting busier and busier, not only with what we're doing in our lives and the choices that we're making, but the technology, the insertion of technology, which can be used for so much good, but our minds just, it's incredible what we're expecting that our minds are supposed to be on all the time.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that, Louise, because I know when we talked, you're like, hey, mention a couple books. And of course, there's always the regular books by, the great ones, right, that everyone reads. But, there's a book that I read every year, and because it's that deep, and it's called An Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I'm sure you've heard of it or read it or whatever. And look, I could have learned Mandarin by the time I finally get this book, right? Because I have to read it over and over, because it's not like you read one sentence, you're like, oh, I get it. It's like, I got to read that 10 times. Everyone be quiet, right? Yeah. So, but it is an amazing book because it really puts in perspective of how you need to let things go, and how you have that little worker in your mind that is always speaking to you. And if that little voice in my head that's narrating a discussion that we're having right now, actually it's kind of quiet, but afterwards it will be making up for lost time. Yeah. But always kind of putting the doubt in your mind, or the what ifs, or making things bigger than it should be. Being able to quiet that voice to bring you some kind of peace and not drive yourself crazy. I just really found, I find it calms me down, and it really makes me reflect. And I don't know if you've read the book, but it's really a great book.
I have, and I too love that one. I feel at this time compelled to share my latest favorite book.
Yes.
If I may, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, and this is supposed to be your interview, but...
No, Louise's book club. I love it.
I know. I seriously, I do love books. So those watching can see, those listening can't see, but it's called Big Miracles by Joanna Garzilli. And it's called, the subtitle is The 11 Spiritual Rules for Ultimate Success. This book actually jumped off the bookshelf, literally, into my partner's hands. And he doesn't typically read this sort of thing. And so he himself was shocked standing in the bookstore that it was even in his hands. He just said, I feel like I need to buy this. So he bought it. And in true Louise style, I started to read it before he really jumped into it. Long story short, this has changed my life. Changed my life to the point that I was only about a third, maybe a quarter of the way into the book. And I had a still moment a reflective moment after I finished some reading. And I sent Joanna Garzilli an email telling her how she had already impacted my life, and asked her if she'd be my coach. Guess who's my coach now?
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. So things don't necessarily have that kind of impact on every time you read.
I'm downloading it the minute we get off this call, so video call.
And just in shout out to Joanna. But just before I finish this Big Miracles talk, the reason I really liked this, and I think it's really important, a really important distinction in a lot of the spiritual stuff that's out there, which is hugely beneficial. But it can leave us still in this space of, well, what do I do with this now?
Right.
She grounds it in, like, we do live in a physical world. And so with that in mind, and with this kind of spiritual awareness, what do we need to do in this physical world? And I liked that kind of, that combination between the two. Anyway, books, but thank you for sharing Untethered Soul. Certainly many, many meaningful books that help to quiet. And I think I heard Oprah say it once, whispers of the soul.
Yeah.
It allows you to hear the whispers of the soul.
Yeah. And we all need that. We all need that quiet time.
We do, right? So in this journey, which has been a long one, and we, have a short period of time to actually talk about this journey, which is worthy of much more than 45 minutes. But what's one of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome, either in your life or through this journey of transition? And what did it teach you?
I mean, it depends which obstacle, right? So, there's been, I've been fortunate, I think, to have, a lot of losses, right? Because I don't think I would be sitting here today without all of those failures. And at the time, it did not seem as exciting as it seems now. I certainly did not appreciate them. But I appreciate them now. And it goes into a number of things. I think, I've lost all my brothers, and that changed me forever. I've lost 3 jobs, one job discontinuance after 17 years, which I told you was like a divorce.
Yeah.
One company didn't get, and I love this company. It was a startup in San Francisco. They didn't get their, Series D financing, no fault of their own, really. And they had reinforced everything I loved about working with the team. So that was personally hard because I loved the people. And then the last one just wasn't a good fit. And I basically got, myself fired. So now just because I wasn't good at it, because I didn't love it. Right. Yeah. And that'll teach you not to chase the money, because that's not a measure of success. Right. So, I think a combination of all of that has really brought me to where I'm at. But at every one of those, I learned something that has made me who I am today, or made me go forward with lifetimes. My last job that, I basically was fired from, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to go, I was going to do this as a side hustle. Now that I'm in it, I know I couldn't have done it as a side hustle. It would have taken me years, if not never. So, and all that experience I learned from innovation and customer experience, I was able to apply.
Yeah.
So if I had not gone through that, I would not have what I have today. So, you really have to, you can have a sea of weeds. You got to pick out the roses, and really know that it's not truly a failure. It's only a failure if you call it a failure. It's only a failure if you don't get back up. It's only a failure if you didn't learn something from it. I think people need to really change the way they think about things that don't work out the way they want it to, because maybe it works out later on.
You know, I think you nailed it there. Things rarely work out the way that we want them to.
Right.
And if instead we can ask ourselves those questions that you just said about failure, I think there's just so much then that can be gained from that. But I don't know if it's our ego, if it's society, but it's certainly that voice in our head that's telling us, keeping us small and making us go to a safe place instead of trying again. So you mentioned, chasing the money is no way to be happy or successful. That really is not a measure of success. How do you measure success at this stage of your life?
I don't really say, it's family. It's really how I feel. It's really how I feel. Because I think that if you associate labels to, it's my kids, or it's my bank account, or it's, whatever. It's taken me 44 years to realize it's how I feel. Mm-hmm. And if I'm waking up motivated and challenged, and I have time to enjoy with my family, and I feel good about things, it's going to be hard. I'm not walking around like a smiling like an idiot all the time. But if I feel good at the end of the day, I accomplished something, and everyone's metrics is different. Then I feel like I've won a little bit, and that doesn't mean everything's firing on all cylinders. I'm about to start getting investors and all that, because we need money to blitz scale and, all that other stuff. But I feel pretty good about it. So I really go from that. And I think when you go through that kind of feeling in your gut, like you said, throwing up, or what feels wrong. Yeah. And there's an undercurrent in your life that is going wrong. Just like, when you feel good, you're doing something to make yourself feel good. So you should, whatever that behavior, whatever that habit, whatever that is, and you can change it like that. If you're sitting there today saying, God, I do X, Y, Z, you can change it tomorrow. I think that. So I can't pinpoint it. I just can only base it on, I feel happy.
I think that's actually so really refreshing when we have metrics, especially in the corporate world, coming out our yin yang, which has to happen. I'm not anti those things, but we're talking about human beings. So the fact that you just use such a simple gauge, which is so valuable, because we were talking about a minute ago about how the fact we don't tune in a lot to actually how we're feeling. We look at the external stuff to validate, check. Well, I'm here to say that at 40 years old, I woke up, well, really at 30, but it took me to 40 to do something about it. I had all the check boxes checked, and I was bloody miserable, and so those success measures may work in business. They don't work in human being life.
I totally agree. Yeah. I lived in key performance indicators all my life, and maybe that's why I've decided to throw them in the garbage. Yes, you need them for business. I get it. But personally, kind of in the garbage, and just kind of go with what I feel.
Personally, and I think even on an employee level, right? What a great kind of check to be using even with your employees.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I work also. I do some work as an HR consultant, and so I'm a fan of employee engagement surveys, but not, to be honest, not necessarily the way that they're done, because we're still keeping it about the KPIs and not the human aspect of our existence, and that's really at the end of the day what it comes to. One thing that you mentioned that I really wanted to highlight, because it was sort of glossed over, was that or maybe like you to go into it a little bit more. Tell us what you learned through the passing of your brothers and how that relates to starting the business you started, because I think that's really cool. A moment ago, you were talking about failures, painful moments, and how those help to define where you are now. So there was a learning there.
Yeah.
When we first spoke, I thought, what a cool way to take a learning from it, obviously some devastating moments, and without that, you wouldn't have created this business. Can you explore that a little bit with us?
Yeah. So, just going back, it's so funny. I'm in the party and celebration business because I was raised Jehovah's Witness. So we didn't celebrate birthdays or Christmases, or we didn't really hang out with worldly people that were outside of the church. I'm not saying anything bad about the religion. Everyone has their religious things. Mom, if you're watching, I had a wonderful childhood. We had tons of get-togethers. I'm okay. But it obviously, any psychologist probably listening to this would be like, well, that obviously stuck with her somehow, because I would obsess when I was in the library and they were having the Christmas party in the classroom, like, what is going on? I know Santa's in there, So, I took this obsession out on my children as they grew up, and I threw them parties. So, it stuck with me. I always was fascinated with, what's it like to go to Halloween and all that stuff. So, or have a birthday party. But we had get-togethers and stuff like that. So I had a lot of great memories. I had a great childhood. We had a lot of other reasons to come together and celebrate. So my favorite memories growing up were those types of events, right? That's where I think my confidence came from, my love of my family and friends. And it's what sticks out most when I think about what I loved about my childhood, right? And there's a million studies out there that says it's very important to raising, children and those types of things. So, but when I was 13 or 14, I had a half brother, Travis, who I never got to meet. It was from my dad's first marriage, and he was killed. And he was into, I don't want to say, anything bad, but he was he put himself in a situation where, he was shot because, he was holding up, I think, a Pizza Hut to get drug money, right? So there was part of me, even though I didn't know him, it's kind of a phantom loss. You know what I mean? Like, you'll never have that opportunity. But, I was young, you kind of, if you don't know somebody, you don't really, so you kind of go through that pretty quickly. And we moved a lot. So I never really stayed in a school. I had friends. My friends were my siblings. And, my dad was a salesman, or we'd move when the rent was due, or just kidding, Dad. But whatever was happening, right? So I was in different schools, several different schools usually during the year. So we were never really planted. And that's why when I got older, it was very important for me to get a home early and be planted with my family. Anyway, so when I was 17, the summer of being a senior, my brother Joshua, he was 15, and two other friends, we went to a dance. Or we always had this little dance out here. And we were in a car accident coming home, and no drugs, alcohol, just didn't have a seatbelt on, going too fast. And, he was killed. My friend driving was killed, and I was there with him. I got out of the car, I was there with him until he passed. And it was like a war scene in a small town when something like that happens, right? So Josh passed, and I'm used to sudden loss, right? And we had a lot of kids pass in the area because we were in a small town that had a lot of back roads, and you had new kids driving and stuff. So a lot of friends, but it impacted me, and of course I acted out and all that stuff. And it's taken me, there's not a day that goes by I don't think of that accident. And it's been over 25 years, right? So after that, I went through my thing, kind of got my shit together, started working, job after job. But I never dealt with that trauma, really. I really haven't. I didn't really even start speaking about it until recently. This is the most public probably I've ever spoken about it, because I always noticed how uncomfortable it makes people when you start talking about death. And not everyone's as comfortable with death as I am. I mean, it's everybody's ending, but nobody wants to talk about it.
That's true.
And then, once City happened, I decided to take a year off, and, I got a good severance package and say, I want to heal. I want to spend time, be a mom, go to the Boy Scout meetings, right? I mean, some of that's for the birds, I'm not going to lie. But moms at home should be paid $200,000 a year, okay? It's the hardest job in the world. So anyway, but I got to spend it. My other brother, Jeremiah, who was a baseball player, went to college, good looking, everyone loved him. I got to spend a lot of time with Jeremiah. We were incredibly close family. And when I decided to take a year off, and about a year in of being off, Jeremiah was one of my best friends. We talk every day. He was 34. He had, he was kind of struggling with depression, which was prevalent in our family. And he had a serious addiction to alcohol, and it got worse and worse. And at a year, Jeremiah passed away, and he still lived with my parents, right? So that was devastating. I mean, knock me on my knees. And I remember with Josh passing, my mom gained 100 pounds. She never left the house. It was, it's like I can't imagine, nor do I ever want to imagine what it's like to lose a child. I know what it's like to lose a sibling. Yeah. But when Jeremiah died, I just remember thinking it's going to kill him. It's going to kill him. So I decided that, hey, I'm going to take 6 months off, or however long it takes. And because my parents live down, 10 miles down the road, and our job is to get vertical at this point as a family, be together, celebrate his life, and get vertical. And that's what we did. And even though financially it was a hardship, I will never, ever regret it one day in my life, because it definitely has helped. Where something like this can destroy a family very easily, it really helped our family heal. I know that's a lot of information, so I'll stop.
I appreciate, again, I appreciate you sharing that so openly and raw, being so raw about it. And it speaks to, we all have these skeletons, which I think when we shine the light on those, on our closet of skeletons, it actually sets us free.
I agree.
And so thank you. And my hope is that I know that will have touched many listeners, and my hope is that has helped someone in some way. And the neat thing that I have learned about you in the short time I've known you is as well how that sort of related to your business, in terms of you learned unfortunately, about planning an event like a funeral, and now you could use those skills and the curiosity that you had as a child around what the hell happens at these parties, and combine that into the business that you have now.
Yeah, and it's funny, I started Lifetimes from the funeral perspective. I really did, from the life celebration. That's where I wanted to do both, but I realized there was no way to do both well when you started. And so I decided the path of least resistance is probably parties, right? And it was part of the plan. So we are building out the life celebrations, because a lot of the mechanics are the same, because there is nothing more, as much as I love to party and celebrate milestones, there's nothing closer to my heart than helping families heal and spend the time. And during the time with Jeremiah planning his funeral, and I kind of took everything on my shoulders. Like, when something goes wrong, I'm a great kind of first person there, and I'll take it on, and I think it helps me deal with it. Right. But I was disgusted in the amount of time that I was running around doing everything versus sitting at home and healing with my family. Right. So that has always been, this is a means to my end. That is always the end goal, is whether it's a sister, a brother, a husband, or whatever, how I can make that process easier. And to anyone out there going through it now, I will just say that time doesn't heal all wounds, because the hardest day about losing anybody is not, I wouldn't say not just the day, but the day of the funeral, the day after the funeral is the hardest day, because that's when everyone goes back to life. Yeah. And that's when you're sitting there going with 18 casseroles in your refrigerator saying, what the hell do we do now? Yeah. Our life's not moving on. So I think it's really important that people have a healthy way of saying goodbye and healing with their families to get them to, because it's a tough road. So that's what I'll say about that. I did not mean to bring the party lights down.
No, I like just where this kind of all goes. Again, I don't like that that's your story, but I like just the vulnerability, right, of these conversations. Yeah. And I think there's so much ability to connect in this hyper-connected world we live in, when we can have these kinds of real conversations. And so I know I've said it, but I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate your willingness to share all of this. And the thing I also take away from what you talk about is how, and I've discovered this myself through my own life journey and through others who I speak with, that our pain, when we can really look at it fully, can often show us the direction to our purpose.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I totally, that is a great statement, because, through everything, my best memories of my brothers and everything were the get-togethers and the time spent together. So that's why Lifetimes, with any celebration, no matter what it wasn't so much about the party theme or, the Instagram picture it was more about, for me, Lifetimes is bringing people together and celebrating memories, celebrating each other, because at the end of the day, that's what's in your bank account. That's what's in life's bank account, right? It's not, nobody gives a crap about the money. It's not going to mean anything to you when you're gone. When you lose somebody, it doesn't make a shit. It is the memories. It's the pictures you pick up and say, oh, remember Uncle Bob's reunion when he got drunk? It's that kind of stuff that makes us all connected, and because we all do the same thing. So it really, Lifetimes was not so much about unicorn parties, as that's a necessary evil. It was more about bringing people together and connecting and having those memories, and that's what's important to me.
And I think that's just a phenomenal way to kind of highlight what it is that you do and why, and you've certainly shared a lot of why you do it. Tell us, well, first of all, I want you to share what your website is, because it's not spelled the way people might think.
Exactly. So this is another example of how you could totally give up before you get started, right? So I was always thinking about names, and I have a lot of things wrong with me, but I am creative. So I was like, oh, I love Lifetimes. And then I was like, oh, well, Lifetimes is kind of like the movie channel, or, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, but it works. So I go in, and just like anyone starting a business, I go on GoDaddy, and I'm like, lifetimes.com, and it comes up, and it's like, the domain to buy it is $108,000. And I'm like, I could have easily said, well, I'm never going to start this company. And then I was like, let me get creative. Let me turn the I's to Y's. And, if people have a visceral reaction, at least they'll never forget it. Right. So, so it's Lifetimes with Y's, not I's. Really, it's lifetimes.com. So you can find it pretty easily.
And I'll include that in the show notes, but I just wanted to make sure that those listening can check that out. So it's LYFETYMES. So that's what Katie means by the Y's. The I's are Y's.com. And so before we close, I want you to share who would go, what are we going to get here at your website as compared to that checklist that you mentioned at the top of the hour that wasn't servicing everyone? So you do what instead? What's your value?
Yeah, so the value that we provide is it's free, right? So you get to go on there and that's just a whatever, right? But you get to go on there and you plan everything for your party or celebration, soup to nuts, right? So you can create a party website that people can go on and they can RSVP or get directions. You can do your registry. You can plan, order food or drink. You can look for bakeries or venues. We have a marketplace that you can get Grubhub or Airbnb or hotels.com. Everything you can think that has to go, invites, save the dates, thank yous. We have a great party decor page. We have an inspiration where you can connect with Pinterest and get, because everyone likes to, have those. Yeah.
I visualize your event.
Yeah. So it is everything soup to nuts to plan a party or celebration. And the goal was, it really, for me, when I was working and traveling, I had no time. Yeah. Right. And I don't care what anyone says, everyone's like, don't leave the dads out. I don't. But let's be realistic. Mostly it's moms who have their little kids with their big eyes. Please, can I have a Batman party? And, we're such a do-it-yourself kind of a world now, right? So there really is a need for it. It will save them hours. They won't have to go to 15,000 different websites, worry about they're going to forget something. It's got budgets, planning tools. It has the best, if you're planning something with co-hosts, to get them involved. If you have a guest of honor, you know, you can get them involved without giving all the details away of the party to make sure that you care for their likes. So I really took the time to sit down and storyboard kind of all the ins and outs of party planning. So you can sit on your couch and start planning in your pajamas or without, whatever floats your boat. In 30 seconds, you can start planning a party, and you can plan all your celebrations in life in one place and get old information uploaded. So it really was meant for the, you know, those moms that have, whether you're a stay-at-home mom and have a million things going on, or you're a traveling mom like I was, or a career mom and just don't have the time. It's to save them hours of time without having to hire an expensive party planner or, you know, any of that.
I just love that. Again, that is lifetimes.com. The eyes are wise. And I will be putting that up on my website in the Louise Loves section, where I put a few things, whether it's lip gloss, whether it's books, whether it's kick-ass women offering services like this. I love to share all of these things that I come at businesses and products that I come across with my listeners as well as my clients. So you can find that there as well if you lose track of the website. Finally, I want to ask if you have any advice for someone getting started in their own business. What's you know, something that you learned that you do differently, or you'd like to give advice to someone if they're about to embark on that?
Start. Don't wait. Start.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you, Katie, truly from the bottom of my heart. I thoroughly enjoyed this time with you and hearing all of your wisdom, your insights, and you are fucking hilarious. So thank you also for the laughs.
That's my defense mechanism, is my humor, but it's how I navigate through life. So there could be worse things.
Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed the experience.
I'm so glad. And I also, of course, want to thank all of you, my loyal listeners and followers, and remind you that information about my radio show and about lifetimes.com and all my guests can be found at www.louisehreed.com. Also, a big shout out and lots of love to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. And finally, I'm here to highlight and showcase people like Katie, who are taking brave, bold action and whose actions have a positive impact in our world. With that said, I'd like to encourage you all to be brave, be bold, and be happy. And in the words of Katie Cunningham, just start. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing you all an amazing day. Goodbye, friends.